our water, and actually so was the Crazy Water Hotel. We decided that the top floor or the elevator room of the Crazy Water Hotel was the perfect place to start our virtual historic tour of Mineral Wells. We're going to be talking about how Mineral Wells is founded, where the crazy part came from, and then some of the really cool things that happened here in this hotel. So we have Carol Elder, who is co-owner of Famous Water, which is the only place now that you can get our bottled water from. And we're also going to be talking to Phil, or Bud Garrett, who we've kind of all dubbed as our officially unofficial historian for Mineral Wells. So Carol, if you want to kind of get started, you have the water piece of how this all got started.
All right. Thanks for inviting me up here today. So there are many legends of how Mineral Wells started, but the most prevalent one that you hear was Judge Lynch and his family. They were all kind of in poor health, living on the border of East Texas, and they were trying to find a drier climate because they're all in poor health. They packed up their kids, their family, their wagon, and they started heading west. They were trying to get further west to more arid country, but because of Indian raids just west of the Brazos River, they kind of held up here in this little valley. Wagon wheel broke, and oxen was struck by lightning. They pretty much thought it was kind of the will of God to stay where they were. And so they made where downtown Mineral Wells is now their homestead. For the first couple years, it was basically the kids' chore to haul water from the Brazos River, which is about, what do you say, a mile and a half ish away, and back here until one day a well driller came by and traded them a set of oxen to drill this well. They drilled the well, and the water that came out had a really funny taste and odor to it. And back in 1877, they did not have health labs or water tests like we have now. And so what they did is they gave it to their livestock, and when it didn't kill their livestock, they started drinking it. And so by this time, Mrs. Lynch, as legend goes, was bedridden with rheumatism. Mr. Lynch's health problems had continued to hadn't gotten better either, and so they started drinking this water. And within a few months, Mrs. Lynch was out of bed. Mr. Lynch's stomach problems kind of eased, and the kids were all a little healthier as well. And so there also weren't like doctor's offices and hospitals readily available for people either. And so when they found places like Mineral Wells or Hot Springs, Arkansas, or Saratoga, or any of these places, Calistoga, where they had mineral waters and people were finding healing with them, people would flock to them. Yeah. And so that's how Mineral Wells literally became a boom town. So within a year after drilling that first well, he had over 1,000 people coming and camping at his homestead, and he was selling the water. And so he was actually selling it for a nickel a cupful. And he would run out every single day, and you had to sign an affidavit of health saying that you hadn't had any yet that day and that you needed it for health purposes. And so that is the modern equivalent today of over $9 a glass.
Wow.
So.
Wow.
And that's where, there were thousands of people coming here, and there was no place to sleep. There weren't general stores. There weren't, and they became a boom town.
Yeah. So that's actually kind of where the term came from, where America drinks its way to health, because everybody, once word got out that the water here had curative powers, which we can't say today, everybody was coming here. And like she said, we didn't have a place for them to stay, which birthed kind of the resort town and the need for lots of hotels. So actually, let's talk about maybe this hotel, how this hotel got started and the information that you had.
Well, the hotel that we have here, actually the building that we're in now, here's actually would be the newspaper from 1927 when it opened. The original Crazy Hotel, which was built kind of on this corner, that original hotel, that by the way, it's billed as fireproof, that actually burned to the ground in 1925. And I don't know, I would mention to you that actually there's a relationship, just as to some degree there is now, between the Baker and the Crazy, because it was the Crazy Hotel fire that prompted the local businessmen to come together to contact D.B. Baker to build a new hotel. But this newspaper article is fascinating. Of course, the hotel was built by a gentleman named Hal Collins, and he was a tremendous promoter. Radio, of course, was really at its zenith at that time. And they actually had a 14-piece orchestra that came and played here for an extraordinary period of time during the grand opening. Literally thousands of people filed through here.
And so Crazy Water was such, in his Mr. Collins' advertising went throughout the United States, and he would have radio shows and barn dances that he would sponsor. And it was such a huge part of pop culture that you can even, at the Country Music Hall of Fame in Nashville, they have an exhibit sometimes that they put out every few years that is just a Crazy Water exhibit.
And you know, in that vein, they did a program here called you have to correct me, Crazy Gang,
Yep,
that broadcast. And when I say it's broadcast, it's not that it was a national broadcast that everybody got to hear. I guess this would be the modern day equivalent of a podcast. I'm too old to understand what that is.
Modern day podcast.
But I do know they made records of the program that they would have here, and they mailed them all over the United States, and they were played every place for 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Just extraordinary coverage, and he was a tremendous promoter.
He was.
But you know, if I can, I probably should add he's probably too good of a promoter. And the reason that I say that is you know, in the 30s, this radio program is going on. He's making extraordinary claims about the healing powers of Crazy Water and mineral wells water. Well, he got fined. They had just created the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. And in 1937, he got fined $7,000 in 1937 money to stop making those claims. And that somewhere in the history that's got to alter what happened or what was said.
Yeah.
So Mineral Wells was kind of rocking and rolling as the premier spa resort town for all of southern United States. This is where people would come from all over to drink and bathe in the water. And it's kind of what made Mineral Wells really unique in the fact that people drank it and you bathed in it to get your therapeutic results, whereas most places you either bathe in it. And so, because Mineral Wells' mineral content is one of the highest in the world. If you look at all the different, even some of the like Eastern European waters, it's the number 4 is right on par with them. So.
Well, and so she's talking about bathing. A lot of people, when you talk about coming to Mineral Wells to bathe in their waters, they're like, what? But really, they came to drink it, to bathe in it, to swim in it. What else? They did all kinds of things with it. Yeah.
So when you'd come here, there would be different water pavilions. And so people would come here and they would, in the old journals it's written that they would come and they would stay a season. And so, and usually there were agricultural workers, and so they would, whenever their off season was for whatever they farmed, they would come here and drink and bathe in the water, and then they would love what the water would do for them. And so they would go back to their homes, and when they go back to their homes, they'd still want to get the same results. And so that's where Crazy Crystals came on, and that's where concentrated waters came on. And so they would just basically dehydrate down the water, and then it would make it more dense and compact and take out the weight for shipping.
And you know, if I can, to put that in historical context, people would wonder, why do you come here? Why would people come and drink water and bathe in it? Well, we'll go back in time. There was a time when they didn't have penicillin, they didn't have medicines. And really, you went to some place like Mineral Wells, Texas, or Hot Springs, Arkansas, or anything in Germany that ends in Baden, or Lourdes. I mean, that's what you did. You sat there, you hoped things got better, and you drank and bathed in the water and hoped you didn't die.
Yeah. So Mineral Wells was in its heyday up until the early 40s, and kind of a trifecta of bad events happened that kind of shut down not only Mineral Wells, but basically the spa resort towns across the United States. Your FDA was organized, and you no longer could make any medicinal claims on the water, period.
Yeah.
And so then prescription drugs, you mentioned, that became readily available. And if you think about it, you know, when we have a headache, we just reach in our pocket and pull out, or our purse and pull out 2 Advil. We take 2 Advil, and we never think twice about why we have a headache. And so, back in the day, you used to use a lot of herbal remedies, and you used to think about, well, have I been out in the sun too long? Have I had too much sugar? What's causing my headache? Versus now, we just kind of pop a pill, put a Band-Aid on it, and go on our merry way.
Yeah.
And then after World War II, we also became a more industrialized nation. And so, as they wrote in their journals, they'd come here for a season. As people went from the farm into industry, vacation times dwindled after World War II, and we became a more industrialized nation. People went from the farms into factories, and now you're lucky if you get 2 weeks worth of vacation a year.
I really enjoyed the way that Rose characterized what you can or can't say about our local mineral water. Let me tell this story that I'm sorry it'll be tedious and you can edit me out. My grandfather actually was the pharmacist at the Baker, and he also had the Crazy Pharmacy next door. And during all that time, he was actually president of the Chamber of Commerce during the 30s for a certain period of time. And he would always make the comment, even though it was 1984, and even though he was in private company, he said, no, I'm not going to tell you that the water you drink from mineral wells will heal you. He said, I'm not going to say that. He said, what I would tell you is that I can't count how many people that were either carried to come have a soda at the soda fountain at my shop, or came in with a wheelchair, or came in with a cane, and then 2 weeks later that wasn't the case. They were healed. She goes, he said, that's all I'm going to say about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of funny. So if you go to the Famous Water, there's an old poster that talks about some of the things that they would have told you then that the crazy water or the mineral water helped with rheumatism and arthritis and digestive things. And that makes me think about some historic postcards, some tourism postcards from way back when. And one of the favorite ones that I have in my office shows a man drinking some crazy water and running uphill to the outhouse because the water, he probably had a number 4.
Yes, I've been on the move since I came to Mineral Wells, Texas.
And it cleaned him out. So that one always cracks me up. But so back in the day when this was the health resort of the nation or of the South, much like today when you would go to the bar and you would sip on a beer, back then people came here to one of the pavilions and sipped on the waters. So that's how big a deal the water was here.
Yeah, at the Famous it's the only pavilion still left in operation. Mm-hmm. And so it was a gaming parlor. So you'd buy a water card and you would come in every day and you would drink a glass or 2 of water. You play checkers and chess. I think there's like a fortune teller out on the back. You had the Crazy here, who obviously had ballroom dancing and orchestras, and there was an amusement park. There was bowling. Every pavilion kind of had their own form of entertainment to entertain people as they were sipping on their water.
Yeah, so it was a big deal.
It was a really big deal.
At one time, there were more than 20 different wells in operation. If I remember
much
correctly,
more than that.
Much more than that.
Probably different. There's probably 20 at the height of different companies that were doing things with the water, either giving baths out of the water, bottling it, a pavilion. But there's probably at one time over 200 wells that were physically pumping the mineral water.
So one of the things that we are working on as a tourism council, we have a project where we are putting together a friend of Mineral Wells, Kelly North, who's not from here, but she belongs to us anyway. We all love her. She has spent many, many, many months putting together old sandboard maps of mineral wells that show where all of our old hotels were, where all of the water wells were, and those kinds of different things. So one of the things that our tourism council is working on is a walking tour map, a historic walking tour map of the old hotels and the old wells. And there were so many that we've actually had to divide that up into 3 separate maps. So look for that to be coming soon.
Oh, that'd be exciting.
And with regards to Kelly North, we'll tell you we're very fortunate that she is our collective community friend and our personal friend. I'll just say she's more one of us than one of us.
That's right.
Yes, I think
That's
so
right.
too.
I think so too. Definitely.
She can talk me under the table history every day.
Oh, me too. She's one of my sources. If I'm looking for information, I either call Bud or I call Kelly. And if I can't get it there, then there's a Facebook group I go check. So, yeah. All right. So, let you tell us a little bit about the Famous Water.
So at the Famous pavilion, so back in the day you had Crazy and Famous, and like I said, there were like 18 other different companies that were doing things with the water. Famous and Crazy were 2 nationally distributed companies, so you could go anywhere and buy crystals or with the water. The original Crazy Water Company went out of business in the 1940s. When it went out of business, by 1970, the trademark rights had lapsed on that Crazy name, and so Famous, being the only one pavilion still left in operation, picked up the trademark of the Crazy, and then so from like early 1970s up until 2004, you would literally see 2 logos on a bottle, Famous and Crazy, and which was crazy. And so when we
It's fitting.
started taking the water back into distribution again, we had to pick, which logo to go forward with. And so we obviously never wanted to lose the history of Mr. Dismuke, the famous founder. He was an instrumental just entrepreneur in mineral wells, and he was a pharmacist. He made lots of products out of the water. You never wanted to lose his history, but then Crazy, because of Mr. Collins's just genius marketing, was always the most well known. And so even though Famous had been in operation continuously, people still call us Crazy. And so for marketing purposes, we went forward with the Crazy in all of our labeling and such. But when you come to Mineral Wells, you'll visit the famous Mineral Water Company Pavilion. That's where our wells are, and we're famous Mineral Water Company, home of Crazy Water.
Well, and Carol and Scott Elder have done an extraordinary job of continuing the legacy
Yeah.
and continuing the presence.
Thank
And
you.
we're very fortunate.
Thank you.
If that well wasn't pumping, it wouldn't be pumping. I'll just say that'd be it.
Yeah,
That'd
yeah,
be it.
yeah. We forgot to talk about where the Crazy came from.
Yes.
And you just can't talk about mineral wells and not talk about where the Crazy came from. So go ahead.
So the Crazy name came from, like, Mr. Lynch drilled the first well around 1877, and it became a boomtown. And like we said earlier, he would run out of water every day. And so then people being entrepreneurial minded and also knowing that he's getting $9 a cup, they're like, I think I'm gonna dig me a well. I think I'm gonna dig me a well. I think I'm gonna dig me a well. And so the third well that was dug by Uncle Billy Wiggins, and is around 1881. At his well, there was a lady that came by every day. Again, there's lots of different legends. The most prevalent one is that she'd be made fun of by the school kids every day because she's a little bit odd. But they would give her a cup of water from the well every day. And over just a short period of time, she was cured of her crazies. And so it became known as the Crazy Woman's Well.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Crazy Well, and then later on, Crazy Water.
Well, but there's a content in the water that's suggestive that it might have done something, if you're
Yes.
comfortable talking about it.
Yeah. So the water does have trace amounts of lithium in it. And so if she truly was indeed crazy, it could have helped, kind of calm her out a little bit. But it also it has this abundance of like trace minerals and electrolytes. And so even just being like deficient in different micronutrients and trace nutrients can make you a little loony as well. So there's lots of different speculations of what could have made her crazy or what she was cured of. But yes, it does have lithium in it.
So that's the Crazy.
Something that unique that is developed here in the Crazy Water Hotel is that, of course, go back in time with me before video games or for people just looked at their phones, but they played games for entertainment. And there are many who suggest that the game of 42, the domino game, actually originated down in the lobby here of the Crazy Water Hotel. In fact, if you pick up a hotel guide from 1920s, it describes that when you come into the Crazy Hotel, all you hear is the rattling of them bones, meaning when people shake the dominoes before they draw a hand. And then it's also been suggested, of course, the train came to Mineral Wells January 1 of 1891, and because that people would come and learn to play 42 here in the lobby of the Crazy Water Hotel, they would get on a train to go home and teach their companions on the train to go home, and the train actually spread the game of 42 all across the United States.